The thing I'm really interested in seeing is how David Turnbull fits back into this team, because as James kind of pointed out, they played with a kind of very straightforward 4-3-3 last season, and although they scored a fair amount of goals, they were fifth in the division for goals scored, so not as much as they should have done since they finished third, but they were third for the amount of shots they hit per game and stuff like that. So they were definitely a team whose attacking intent matched where they finished in the league. I think that's fair to say. But the thing that I'm kind of intrigued by is that, again, if you kind of dig under the surface, there are maybe concerns in the right word. I don't want to kind of belittle what they did last season, but there are maybe concerns. Again, I've just used the word anyway, but there are things that I've noted that I do wonder if it needs addressed next season, I'll put it that way. And it does kind of come down to, the way the team passed the ball. For example, if you kind of just look at who's creating the assists in this Motherwell team, at least based on last season, Polworth is by far, or at least was by far, the best playmaker in the team at 15 assists. But a lot of those obviously came from set pieces. He was a fantastic corner taker. I mean, Motherwell had a really good set piece routine at corners that led to quite a lot of goals, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know off the top of my head, but it certainly comes to mind. After that, you've then got Helton on 7, you've got Chris Long on 4, and you've got Alan Campbell on 3. And although, as James just said and correctly pointed out, that Motherwell do have a lot of goal scorers around the pitch, they don't have a huge amount of playmakers around the pitch. And if you actually dig into their kind of passing stats, that kind of rings true, in my opinion. They were 9th in the division for total passes per game. They were 7th in the division for key passes per game. So a key pass obviously is a pass that leads to a shot. They were 7th in the division for passes into the final third. That really surprised me. And they were 10th in the division for passes per minute. And then, of course, they were 7th in the division for deep completion passes, which are passes that are made into the opposition box. Now, there are kind of mitigating circumstances there. There are things that kind of throw those stats off. For example, obviously Motherwell fans will know very well that they were a team that heavily focused the ball down either wing. They really relied on wingers who would basically dribble into the box rather than perhaps pick out passes. They were probably one of the best teams in the division for actually having possession in the opposition box. But it doesn't really get away from the fact that even though they were such an attacking team, they weren't actually very good at passing the ball. And that's something that kind of concerns me, because, the way that they kind of functioned last season really kind of it really relied on, the pace and the kind of talent of guys like Hilton, Seedorf, Chris Long, to kind of step up every week. And I'm intrigued to see how, whether Turnbull can come into that team and fill that hole. I really have no idea how Turnbull and Polworth play together, for example. I know you obviously have Campbell in there, who knows probably both of them quite well, but there are other midfielders that have to fit in. But if you kind of look at the players they've brought in, there aren't any real playmakers there. James mentioned Jake Hasty, but he would obviously probably be just another kind of attacking wing player. In his 18 games for Motherwell before he moved to Rangers, he got 7 goals and only 1 assist. Turnbull obviously can create goals, but he's obviously another player who's actually far better at scoring goals. And his 36 games in the senior team before he got injured, he had 15 goals but just 7 assists. So although it might not actually end up being a problem, because they proved last season that they maybe don't actually need one, there aren't any real standout playmakers for me in that team. Intriguingly, the only player who really looks to me like a player who's in the right position, who can maybe go on to continue adding this element to his game, is actually Alan Campbell, who he picked up a handful of goals, he got 3 assists, which is by no means hugely impressive, but if he is going to continue being this kind of dynamic box-to-box player, if he can kind of add that kind of playmaking role to his team, that could be really vital, because we know how much Motherwell like to switch things up if it isn't working. We know how light on his feet Robinson likes to be with his tactics and his formations, but I'm just concerned that he might be limited next season if he doesn't have an actual playmaker in that team, aside from Polworth from set pieces and potentially David Turnbull.